Hello, everybody, and welcome to the channel. Today I'm joined by Mike from Firelock Games to talk about Port Royal as we enter the midway stage of the campaign on Kickstarter. So, Mike, it's absolutely terrific to have you with us once more.
Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Two old men with their pipes. This is what the internet is
That's
all
right.
about.
That's right.
So, Port Royal, the campaign itself, like we say, is into the midway point and is going absolutely great guns. But for
Mhm.
anybody who has missed either our chats about it on things like the Weekender or hasn't seen the campaign itself, do you want to give people a brief idea of what the concept is with it?
Sure. So, Port Royal is um, it's a small warband style skirmish game. So you're having 4 to 10 models average. Um, Really, probably 5, 6, 10 models, probably better average. But and it's a campaign driven system where it's very narrative based, and it's taking place in the destroyed city of Port Royal after the 1692 earthquake. And we've taken a little line written in the history of it where as the earthquake was going on and in the immediate aftermaths, all the different pirates and privateers on the island are basically looting, right? So they're just taking advantage of the situation. They're
Hmm.
like, all right, let's just grab as much crap as we can. And to spice it up a little bit and to throw a little bit of a little bit of historical fiction into there, we've also gone ahead and included many other nationalities that people from Blood and Plunder would be familiar with. So every nationality in Blood and Plunder has some representation in Port Royal. So it's speaking of Blood and Plunder, it's based off of those off of that universe is probably the best way to say it,
Yeah.
with a hint of those mechanics. So the same concepts, mechanical concepts that are present in Blood and Plunder, you'll find in Port Royal, even though the actual game system is totally different.
Hmm.
But one cool thing is that they do all the stats and point system from Blood and Plunder is 100% transferable. So if you play Blood and Plunder currently, and you just want to play a smaller kind of just small game on a 2 foot by 2 foot board,
Hmm.
and with a handful of models, maybe introduce other players into certain aspects of the game, of the world. Really, you can import your stuff into this game, and it'll work. It'll
So,
work perfectly. So,
yeah, it's a really handy way of doing it.
mhm.
Simply because you can then start to weave in a sort of a campaign narrative as well. So
Right.
potentially
Mhm.
into a fort to rescue a captive crewman. You're
Right.
not going to have your full
Mhm.
war bands in there. You're not going to be playing the big, but having a small group over the wall in the middle of the night and then fighting through and getting the guards and getting them out. That sort of
Absolutely.
narrative
Mhm.
style of a game works perfectly for it.
Yeah, and one of the big differences between so it's a different scope of I guess combat you're
Mm,
representing. So in Blood and Plunder, you've got like a what we in historical terms what you'd call a skirmish, just like a small battle,
mm,
average of like 25 to 50 models, depending on how elite your force is, and that's pretty typical for a game. And so you're focused more on the squads, on commanding them, and doing that whole thing. Whereas
mm,
in Port Royal, it's more of like a street fight, like a handful of people just in a quick brawl skirmish kind of situation, where it's much more personal. And so the it's got as a result, it's got a reaction system which Blood and Plunder does not, and it
mm.
changes the turn sequence so that it's more about back and forth. So you do one thing, I can react and try to do another thing, and it keeps both players really engaged, and I think really captures kind of that like intimate sort of hand to hand, man to man fighting.
Yeah. It's interesting uh, route you've taken with things like, well, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds in the mechanics because there's a playtest group and mechanics are still evolving and changing as time goes on. But the initiative
They're
system,
mostly set at this point, so
yeah,
you can go into it.
oh,
It's
okay.
fine.
But well, the
It's
initiative,
little tweaks at this point.
I quite like the initiative system as well.
Mhm.
Obviously, a few weeks ago there was it was slightly different, but now there's the sort of the
Yeah,
bidding mechanic, which
yeah, that's
is
been the
about in
same. Yeah,
some of the other games. Um, but the idea that you can try and reduce the difficulty level of your own initiative when you need to push for it. is a
Right.
really nice touch, because then you can force your hand when you need to and hope that your opponent hasn't done the same, and then also hope that your dice play ball with you. Um,
Of
which
course.
is it's never going to happen for me, to be fair. But it's good.
It's a common problem. Yeah, that's pretty typical of all of our games. We always have to. We always try to include, initiative in. I can't think of a game where initiative is not pretty important,
Yeah.
and going first is always it's always helpful in most cases. Or sometimes going second. So it's
Mhm.
that's a balance, depending on the scenario and the situation. But so having some control but still being somewhat random to me is kind of an important thing, and is common. You'll see that in every one of the games we put out. Because if it's just a random roll off to see who goes first, that can really swing the games a lot of times, as anybody
Yeah.
who's played any of these games knows. So having some control and having a little bit of and giving up something in order to gain something in initiative has always been it's a pretty key feature in all of our games.
Yeah. Yeah, it adds a bit of player agency to it as well, which
Yeah.
is always welcome. Um,
Mhm.
because there's nothing worse than being solely at the mercy of RNGesus,
Yeah.
because he's a terrible man when it left his own devices, and when you need that dice to come up, it just won't. It never will. It's just par for the course. Um,
That's right.
so I'm not sure how long it took to rebuild Port Royal after the actual earthquake. Presumably, this is where timelines deviate then from historical fact into the Port Royal game. The earthquake
Mhm.
happened, it wrecked the town, and then this is where the campaign takes place. So, uh, is the town itself then as much of a sort of a character as individual crewmen then for people's lists? Does it grow
Absolutely.
and evolve and
Yeah.
change?
Um, it will sort of grow, evolve, and change, in that you'll get. So the game really takes place in the immediate aftermath. Probably you're talking in the actual game setting. It's
Hmm.
probably weeks, maybe months if you want to stretch it. Um, the city itself was never truly rebuilt. It was kind of more repaired, and because that the earthquake basically, Port Royal was like the main city of Jamaica, and
Hmm.
that's why today it's Kingston, because the after the earthquake it never really recovered. I mean, most like a third of the actual land went into the ocean, so there wasn't a significant portion of the town that was just gone.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's that doesn't bode well for the future. So it's not a good place to try to rebuild and start over. They did fix stuff and rebuild, and that took a while. But that was kind of the beginning of the end for Port Royal. Kingston became the main hub right across the bay from where Port Royal is. But the game in the game terms, it does. So you are through the events that will trigger both during the game and in the post game sequence.
Hmm.
It does sort of tell a story of the town and the things happening in it. Like you could trigger events where in the city you'll get wild animals all of a sudden where there wouldn't have been prior. Really, you'll get things like aftershocks of the earthquake. You'll get unstable buildings that'll fall apart on you. You'll encounter um, you can stumble across rotting corpses, disease ridden, and wild dogs feeding on them, and all that good stuff. So these
Yeah.
things all kind of pop up throughout the game and do tell the story of what really happened.
I think that's key for people to sort of focus in on, that it was a real event,
Hmm.
and the fact that you're sort of blurring the lines at the edges doesn't
Yeah.
change the sort of the devastating impact it had at the time, but it does make it a very interesting proposition to explore, as people, I suppose, carve out their little niches within the surrounding area, and trying to wrest control, for want of a better word, of supplies. As I suppose the looting wasn't just gold and whatever else finery they could
Yeah.
find, but also
Hmm.
just the basic necessities to survive in the aftermath.
Yeah, and then some of the things you'll encounter. So you may come across priests, surgeons. You're going to trade with like smugglers and merchants and things like that. Like you'll encounter just like a wandering former buccaneer that you could recruit into your force, and things, all kinds of stuff like that that you could encounter. That as well as finding equipment and different things that are helpful, as well as rare, unique weapons that you won't be able to buy normally. So that just are scattered about. So there's a lot of opportunity for that sort of thing.
Yeah, the post game or the campaign sort of post game bits and pieces are quite nice. I really like the stumbling through the woods. You find a timid priest hiding behind a bush. He'll join you. He's absolutely terrible, but still priest. So they're still handy to have around. Little morale boosters that they can be in some cases.
Yeah, they give you
And
the extra fortune point. It's pretty big
yeah,
in this game.
and I love the fact that it's not just you have found a blunderbuss, you have found a box of grenades. The fact that you can find
Mhm.
survivors who've been shell shocked and are willing to come with you and be part of your crew because you'll feed them. So
Definitely.
all of a sudden things are looking up for them.
Mhm. Right.
So campaign wise, then
Mhm.
how in depth does it get? Because campaigns are always fun. Sometimes
Yeah.
trying to get people to stay on board is a tricky part because you'll get one
Right.
person will start winning and
Mhm.
then they become unassailable from their lofty vantage points. Have you aim for a more moderate expansion in the campaign, or is there a rubber banding effect to try and pull people back down?
Right. So yeah, the short answer is yes. the uh the primary thing, so there's a few balancing points. So first of all, anytime you're playing a game, you'll gain infamy as that's the rating we use to determine
Mm.
how powerful your warband is, essentially points. Um You'll gain infamy, and then your infamy rating. If you have whoever has the lower infamy rating is going to get all of the tiebreakers, all of the scenario, like when there's a choice of deployment or what have you. Like the lower rated warband is going to get those choices, and those things
Mhm.
can be very significant. Um, as well as the game has a currency of it's got and I'm forgetting the term now. So we use a mechanic called fortune points, which is,
Mhm.
if you're familiar with Blood and Plunder, it's similar but different in this game. You get 6 every turn as a default. If there's disparity between the two, you'll get more. So that's another thing that helps. And those things are very powerful because they're what you use to bid for initiative. They're what you use to reroll. You can get extra actions out of your characters with them. You can make your attacks more deadly. Like there's different. They do a lot in the game, and managing that is a core feature of the game. And they kind of help mitigate luck, and also like just they give you a lot of tactical choices on when to push and when not to push and when to save, because you can get really aggressive, but then when it comes time when you need those later when you're defending, it could be problematic. So, but you'll get bonus points of those, and then also it's not we make it kind of expensive to grow your warband. So
Mhm.
you're gonna mostly be replacing losses, but you can if you're doing really well, you can increase your numbers um, from starting point. You don't have to be doing really well, really, but
Yeah.
we make it so that you're not just going to explode your warband in 2 or 3 games. It's just not going to happen, even if you're
Yeah.
really lucky, unless you're just really spending all your money. But then another control point is the mutiny factor. If you spend all your money and then you come up negative one game, you could suffer a mutiny, and then you've lost your commander, and now there's a new guy taking over, and that's gonna put you on the downfall. So it makes it so that when you're on top, you've got to really fight to stay there. The game, the campaign and the game itself.
Mm.
So we'll do that naturally through a number of different things like that.
Yeah. I like that. You have to
Hmm.
spend your pieces wisely.
Hmm.
Because wasn't that part of the charter that pirates had, that they all got a fair share of the loot
Right.
that they came
Yeah.
across. So all of a
Hmm.
sudden, your captain going, "Well, we've got a load of it. I'm going to spend it all on shiny new equipment for me. Oh, I can't feed you next month. Oh dear." At
Yeah,
that
that won't
point,
bode
yeah,
well for you here.
yeah, it won't go well. I do like the fact that your characters are not just influential in game terms on the tabletop on the battlefield, but also they're the ones who decide um, where you're going to go exploring. So if you want extra roles on those campaign charts, having
Hmm.
extra sort of officers to
Yeah,
direct the men is key. But then at the same time, having extras of those is going to
more
impact how many
expensive.
men you
Yeah.
can field. So
Hmm.
there's a balancing option in your list building, and you can you can choose to go either way quite comfortably. It's just you have to be realistic about how that's going to affect you in the long run, especially
Yeah,
if you get taken out of action.
your officers take double shares to the rest of your crew, so they're more expensive to maintain, but they are very helpful. Yeah, so that is and they help. They're also really important in how you deploy your forces in certain scenario breakdowns. So that could be another just factor of that of the
Yeah.
balancing act. There's a lot of
Uh,
decision making in this campaign and in the game in general. So
well, tell me about the solo rule set then, or the solo add-on, because I've seen that, and
mhm.
it's only a few pages long, but seems to be
Yeah,
relatively tight, comprehensive. So it offers up
well,
not
thank you.
just solo play, but the option of cooperative play as well. If people
Right.
want to try and do something different with not just with Import Royal, but possibly within Blood and Plunder as a nice little solo tack on as well.
Yeah. So I have just a fundamental principle that as a game designer, my job is to tell you how to have fun, but at the same time, not box you in too much. So the there's like a whole section toward the end of the rules right now where it's got the solo, it's got co-op, and it's got different ways, different alternative ways, just suggestions to run your campaign.
Mhm.
So you could do like a game mastered campaign where you could just have a game master running a group of players through a story, and which is it's this kind of campaign. If you're familiar with BattleTech campaigns, is really similar to how that runs. I
Yeah,
mean, obviously it's more like a role playing sort of thing, but it's more of a miniatures game, so it's like a hybrid there. And then you could do the same thing but co-op. So you could just, if you don't
Mhm.
have a game master, you could kind of run through just a campaign. And then there's different ways to do that. You could basically build a series of smaller war bands and play together, or you could just build one war band and each player has an officer and then controls some of the crew and different things like
Yeah.
that. So we just try to give you as many different options to just enjoy and play it the way you want, and give you some parameters on ways that we've done it and we know work. So you've got a proven system there that you can play head to head. You can play purely solo and just run through a campaign on your own. You could play co-op against. You could do a little bit of both. So you can have like you can play two war bands together against co-op, just to maybe, which could be a good catch-up mechanic if some players are really falling behind or if some players have joined late, things like that. So we put a lot of flexibility in there so that we can make sure that people just can be able to play this game the way they want to.
I've got a British force kicking around for Blood and Plunder, and I really like the
Mm-hmm.
idea of a couple of competing pirate groups or other nationalities who are privateers, pirates, whatever, who are actually
Mm-hmm.
running through the campaign, but every now and again, just introducing a game where the AI comes in, a load of redcoats land and attempt to push you back out of town for some reason, and just having to
Right.
deal with them as a third non-player force that
Yeah.
occasionally will arrive and just kick people. Because
Mm-hmm.
I just it amuses me to the very center of my being, to be fair. But at some point, obviously, nationalities, nations will come in and go, well, this needs to be taken care of. So having a force that will pop up every now and again and just go, why are you here? Put that down, get out of town, or we're going to shoot you. So that's always good. And it's like I
Right.
say, I'll bring this up very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The AI mechanics for people who haven't seen them are very, very simple indeed. It's just
Yeah.
really two charts. One is the card that is drawing for them, and then the other is what they're going to do depending on where they fall on the first table. So it's a really simple flow chart or priority chart that you can just pick up immediately without having to think too much into it. I've played some
Yeah.
I've played some great AI and solo rules, but the amount of work that's gone into them, the amount of work that required to actually work out where you're supposed to be and what you're going to be doing can be overwhelming and can slow the game.
Yeah.
Whereas this is just flip a card. Where are we? We're in A. What they're going to do? Well, they've got unloaded guns, so they're not going to shoot, but they're going to move and reload. Or they're going to reload and then shoot, or they're bump, bump, bump. Just quick like that.
Right. Yeah. And that was so during the fun times of the pandemic, I was looking at a lot of different solo systems and I kind of ran across a lot of the same things. They were either just really simplistic and predictable or overly complex and
Mm.
difficult to run through. So I was trying to find something kind of in the middle, because this is the system we use is based on the Blood and Plunder one. So Blood and Plunder does have solo rules. A
Mm.
lot of, in case you're not aware, they're on our download section of our website. You call them the solitaire rules. But the idea was that like have some kind of dynamic, and because of the scoring system that both games share, um, Port Royals is slightly different, but it's the same principles.
Mhm.
Um, the whether the AI is winning or losing will determine how they act. So, and then that's based on a random card draw, so it's never totally predictable. And we've even simplified it further in this case by adding a deck inside the player aid deck, so that it's literally just you have three decks, and it'll tell the AI is either winning, losing, or tied, and you just draw from that deck, play the card, follow the list, whatever,
Mhm.
follow the action chain, and whichever one's most appropriate, you do that one first. And that's all there is to it. So it's even easier that way. Then you don't have to reference the chart.
Well, yeah. If I can avoid having to reference stuff, I will always avoid having to reference stuff. So having
Right.
just a very small, light system that you can just jump in and jump off is always an absolute joy to behold. So let's talk about the campaign itself. Then it's currently running on Kickstarter and has been going tremendously well. Uh,
Yes,
so,
thankfully.
so what were you looking to get out of the campaign initially? And obviously you've got stretch goals and the like pushing on
Yeah.
from here anyway. But what was the sort of initial targets, and where do you think that you're going to go with this?
Well, we knew we needed at least 15,000, which was the minimum goal to just make the game, right? So
Mm,
that's what we needed to fill in the gaps, finish what we started, just send a minimal print run. So that was where we were at, because thankfully we're using existing models from the Blood and Plunder range,
mm,
primarily to keep costs down for us and the customers, and
yeah,
to keep so we can turn the game around quickly. Because the idea is to have it out this year. So, which is totally doable. We don't have to worry about
yeah,
all the hard parts, because printing is something we've done a ton of, and we got that down. Like
yeah.
we know the process, so we know we can turn this around quickly. So that's part of the plan. So that was that. It's always impossible to guess what you're going to do and how something's going to be received, but we were hoping to do at least 50.
Hmm.
50 would have been 50 marks. Okay, a success. So we paid like 50 would cover all the shipping and manufacturing and give us extras to sell later, and that's
Yeah.
all covered. So that's we've well exceeded 50 at this point. It looks like we'll be doubling that this week, hopefully. And as far as where it'll go, it's always hard to tell, but I'm hoping. I mean, at this point, I'm hoping at least 150 would be great, but if not,
Why
hey,
not?
I'm super happy already. And I'm
Yeah.
really thankful to our community and to a lot of new people that have jumped on board here. It seems like so not current Blood and Plunder players, which is encouraging. Which is part of the idea of the project, is to bring in new people who maybe like want to play a nice fun pirate game, but don't
Mm,
want to get into, maybe are a little intimidated by Blood and Plunder.
sure.
Maybe there's a lot of guys who will pretty much play exclusively skirmish games like this and
Small scale
such. So
skirmish. Yeah. Yeah.
right. Hmm.
And I mean, it bodes well for not just the campaign, but also then the community pushing on from that.
Yeah.
When you get
Hmm.
a load of new players in, because you'll often see, like you say, people may not want to take the step into collecting a full force for something that's brand new, with their
Right.
their current group, who may be exclusively into other systems or types of game. But being able to
Hmm.
turn around and go, well, this game you can pick up the PDF and then pick up a box of sailors,
Yeah.
and maybe a character box or whatever it is from Blood and Plunder. People could potentially be grabbing the miniatures in advance and then just
Hmm.
waiting for the actual rule set to arrive. And when
Yeah.
it lands on their
Hmm.
doorstep, they'll already be in a position to start in straight away,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
because all of the plastics, like you say, are already there. The tooling's done, the hard part's done, and they're all out in the world.
Hmm.
And they're
Yep.
a fantastic. I've been through, I think, all of the plastics. They're absolutely stonking. The only ones I haven't seen are things like the
Thank
accessories,
you.
because they were
Hmm.
like a Kickstarter exclusive at the time. But it's nice to see those back. So being able to, you know, turn certain people into Captain Hook if you want to, that's very much a
Yeah.
viable option. Uh,
Yeah, and for those ambitious modelers too, if your character loses their hand or their leg, you've got the option to lop it off and glue on a new piece. So.
And I know so many people. I've done that in the past. I've done that with lead models from campaigns way back in the day for other games, where people lost limbs or had them replaced with prosthetics, and they came off. which was a more frightening and expensive proposition 20 or 30 years ago. So absolutely banging through the likes of the stretch goals at the moment, which are sort of upgrading and expanding on quality of life, shall we say. They're not necessary for Port Royal to be a complete game and a success. That's already taken care of. But if people then have the option to get in and do things like add, is that a crocodile or an alligator? Yeah, it's a crocodile. It's wide snout. That's how that one goes, isn't it?
No alligators in the Caribbean. Only crocodiles.
It's the best way. But yeah, you can get in and add additional bits and pieces that are nice to have, but not a requirement. So things like the maroon character, sort of, that we can see there, the sprue resin. That's nice. So that's going to be part of your. You do these.
So these would be resin
bits and pieces.
Yeah. So those would be resin models. Yeah, on a little sprue like you see there. So those are cool. I mean, I really wanted to do a lot of those. I'm glad the campaign has progressed well, so we could throw a lot of those in. So we could justify the time spent to make all those, to get them prepared for the model, for the campaign. Really, it's the time more than anything. So, this is going. We've had to invent a few along the way, because we think things went a little quicker than we thought. So,
yes, more coming soon.
Yes,
I see that.
And then we've got a few. They're mostly add-ons, but there are a few that are like freebie add-ons. Like the wreck ship will be part of the main kit. The other building will be part of the main kit as well. The poster is going to go in all the boxes. The other building, the extra terrain bit for the building, again, that one's part of the cardboard and the physical kit. So that let us throw in an extra punch board slot in there. So
yeah, I really like the punch board terrain as well.
Yes, I'm very excited to get it. We've had some prototypes done, and it's just to be clear, it's hard to show all of it there, but there's actually a lot. It definitely fills up the 2x2 pretty thoroughly. It's missing like 2 buildings there, and there's a lot of walls. I think there's like 16 walls. There's also a bunch of ladders and things. So you can fill out your board nicely with the punch board terrain. And what's cool, one of the things and it's always a big goal for me. I love accessibility, and I love box games. So it's fully complete. Like, you can buy, if you're not into wargaming, or you're just don't have a proper terrain collection or whatever, you could buy the main box. Has literally everything you need except glue, and then you should buy paint as well. But technically, I guess you don't need paint, right? So, but but add some glue to build your models, and you're ready to play. And just building 4 per player is a good, like, if you just want to learn the game, you don't want to be too intimidated, you can build 4 models each, and you can play a good game with 4 models a piece. So it does work.
Which is always great, that you can just sort of step in very quickly, and just get rolling dice, which is always a winner. I will say one more thing about those little unlocked characters as well, because there's obviously the female pirate. The multiple head options are great, because I assume they will be completely compatible with the plastics. Obviously, the plastics, certain heads fit certain bodies, but by the medium of a file or a sharp knife, then that gives you some more optional heads to go on to, especially for things like the maroons as well. Having some additional maroon heads that you can pop onto some of the plastics to really characterize your force. Is that a word? It is now. Just really push into that specific force you're building. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, and so I wanted to originally do the plastics with ball joint heads, but because of the way we did the different options and stuff, the factory was just like, can't do that. It's not gonna work. So we acquiesced to their knowledge and experience. So we said, fine, we'll just do it this way. But so the resin ones are ball joint heads, so they're a little more posable. But of course, to put them on the plastics, this resin is really easy to cut and work with. So it'd be no trouble at all to just cut the little ball joint off and glue the heads on. So I've already done it to a few, so it works.
Milliput and green stuff is your friend. Pick your putty of choice, and
and those. I haven't even needed that. Just glue. Just a knife and some glue.
It's the way to do it.
Gets the job done.
Um, there are, if people are interested, a few places they can go on Tinterwebs to stay up to date with Port Royal.
Yeah.
Obviously, I, I very briefly brought up the playtest rules there. The
Mhm.
playtest group is out and about. Is that going to still be accessible to people for a while? Because obviously you're still doing playtesting, or is it going to be closed off at some point soon?
So that's wrapping up pretty soon. It'll probably be right around the time, probably a month after the project ends. That'll probably close
Okay.
off. Just leave it open just in case, because really we're getting pretty close to wrapping it up. But it's small stuff at this point, and really it's
Yeah.
going to be more about layout and and clarity right now, because really
Hmm.
most of the mechanics are locked down. I'm sure there's still some errors to find that hasn't really fully gone through the editor yet. So I'm sure there's some stuff we missed, little things,
Yeah.
but that's the main thing right now. So the more we keep that open, the better for people to look through. Now that is a closed group,
Yeah.
but we have a solid group of players in there right now going through it. But we so anyway, the that should be wrapped up probably right around very close to the time the project ends. So
Okay.
because the plan is to have everything being printed within a month of the project closing.
Wow.
So everything finally submitted. So that's the plan. So if, unless we run into something, obviously we're going to do it right rather than fast. But unless we run into some major issues, that's how it should go down. So
Yeah. So if people like tinkering with rules and trying to break things or have a look at how things are going to go, they can apply there and see whether or not they're allowed access. But for the mere mortals among us, there is just a public group available as well,
that's right.
where people can hop in and stay up to date with everything that's happening. And that is
Mm-hmm.
just Port Royal by Firelock Games, which is, 2,000 members currently. So clearly people like it. And you can see how the
Yeah.
campaign is going. And I imagine there's a whole host of people getting in here and adding their uh, 2 pieces of eight's worth to things. Oh, there we go. There's a little caiman. Hi. Just in case you're wondering how you need to paint that 3D print whenever you finally get it, like that.
That's right.
But yeah, so people, like I say, the models are all available. If you get the access to the playtest group, then you'll have some of the rules you can play around with, and why not just get in there and just start getting plucky for the fray. I imagine there will be quite a few interesting battle reports and scenarios coming in the not too distant future from people as well.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Um, it's always a joy to speak to you, Mike. Uh, before I let you
Likewise.
go, I will just say, for Blood and Plunder fans, Blood and
Mm-hmm.
Pigment and Oak and
Summer of Plunder.
Seal are doing Summer
Oak
of
and Iron.
Plunder. Oak and
Oh,
Iron.
you mean
Oh no, Timber and Seal is the other group. Yeah,
Timber and Sail? Yeah. Yeah.
try too many ands and ands, and I get confused in my old age.
Dead Man's Chest is another one. I think they're involved as well,
Yeah, and
and
yeah, the Plunder.
the Plunder Den is involved. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So maybe a few
So
others, but
yeah,
it's early in the morning here, so
more than a few others. More than a few others. They're two
yeah.
weeks into the campaign. If people haven't seen that, Firelock, I know, support them, but this is 100% community driven
Yes.
campaign, and every year it just goes from strength to strength. So if people are interested in Blood Plunder and Oak and Iron, if you
Hmm.
haven't already got involved with the summer campaign, it's worth popping over and having a look, having a chat with them. And if nothing else, if you are interested in seeing how these games play out and what the community is like, then this is, I think, the most glowing recommendation of a community you will ever find.
Absolutely.
Just the sheer focus they have on crafting a fantastic summer campaign and a narrative for everybody involved from the top down is a joy to behold every year. So you aren't just one person throwing stats into a spreadsheet going, I played 150 points of against X number of whatever. You are
Hmm.
part of a nation, part of a team. There's an overall commander. They plan, they push, they allocate resources, and sometimes they will send you off to your deaths if they feel so appropriate. But it really shows what the community is like, and shows just how the games fit and mesh together so nicely. And I imagine next year the Port Royal Skirmish games may get added into this narrative campaign system
That's the
alongside
plan.
Oak and Iron and Blood and Plunder, to just really
Mhm.
have an all-encompassing narrative campaign throughout the summer.
Yeah, and I really can't overstate how amazing of a job they're really doing. I mean, there's a lot of officially run things by that companies run for their campaigns and things
Mm.
that are just pale in comparison to this. I mean, it's incredible the work that those guys are all doing, and they're doing a ton of work. Like, they're working around the clock on this stuff. So you got to really shout out to them and really appreciate all the stuff they're doing. I mean, they're just doing a bang up job. And we've got we're supporting them this year, so we've made it into an organized play thing officially. So there's a kit that you can get, go through your
Mhm.
local store, and there's an organized play kit that's got a poster, a little booklet with all the scenarios, some minis, some exclusive cards, a bunch of nice things, and really, really nice coins. It was first come, first serve on the good stuff. So a lot of people got some really nice coins, but they're all good. They're really nice. But those were all provided for by Joseph Forster, who is the brain behind Blood and Pigment, as well as him and the rest of his crew. And I don't know how much of them the rest of them contributed, but he sent me those, so I'll just give him the credit. So it's fine. It's they're all doing a good job.
He can
It's
share it down
amazing.
the
Yeah.
line. He can
Yes.
give
Yes.
everybody a hug on your behalf.
Exactly. So, but they're yeah, it's just super cool what they're doing. I mean, I wish I could be more involved. Hopefully, once the Port Royal campaign wraps up, we send off to print, I could get involved in the tail. But it's been really, really cool to watch and see how it unfolds. And if you're not, just go look at it. Just go look at what they're doing. Go to the Blood and Pigment blog that's where they're hosting all the information,
Mm.
and it's pretty impressive. It's a lot of fun. People are having a great time with
Yeah, you get a sort of a wrap up of weeks as they
it.
get completed, and then they do like a focus into specific um, battles or battle reports that they think are interesting or significant in some way, while it's
Yeah.
all being dealt with by one overarching hive mind that's there, who doesn't get to play because they have to remain neutral and plot all the points and sort everything else out. And I feel bad for that person every year, because I really would really want to be not that. You want to be in there. You want to be, bringing slip alongside and boarding, and not just hearing about it secondhand afterwards.
Absolutely, and it's a tremendous amount of work that they're doing. So it's not it's no small task. It's a big deal. So it's awesome. They're doing an amazing job. It's super fun. It's awesome just to see the community uh, just run with this kind of thing out of their just love for the game
Mm.
and each other, because it's just like it's a really cool community. Everybody's so positive. It's the unusually positive, kind
Yeah.
community for the most part. So it's which is always surprising these days.
Yeah.
So
Let's hope it remains so for many years to come. Mike, it's been an absolute
hopefully.
pleasure. If anybody has any questions, pop them below. We'll pass them across to the guys. Check out the campaign, both the Kickstarter campaign for Port Royal, if you haven't already, and the Blood and Pigments Summer of Plunder campaign for all things piratey. We're going to move on, and we'll see you all again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.